without further ado, let's just get right into it and bring in Jason Lavigne. Jason, welcome. Thanks for finally joining me. I've been trying to make a connection with you for some time, and it's been really difficult. My schedule's so tight. I've got so much going on, especially with a full-time job, and you're busy all the time as well. And I see that you're online nearly every day, and you're covering lots of different stories. So yeah, pleasure to make my acquaintance to you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, Clyde. And yeah, it's been interesting to try and line up our schedules because I do 2 daily podcasts, a morning one and an afternoon one. So it definitely makes it a little bit difficult to kind of arrange your time with you. But I'm glad we made this happen today. So thank you for reaching out.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure that there's links in the description of this video. We'll get links out so everybody can go subscribe to your channel and follow you there so you can check out more of that. I understand you do on YouTube and also Rumble, I saw.
I'm on 8 platforms, so I'm on all the major ones. Facebook,
okay,
Twitter, all of them.
All right, yeah, I've just
we have to get the messages out.
I guess, yeah, I've been dropping the ball on that, going out to all the different platforms. I put out a little bit here and there. My mainstay is here on YouTube, but so I wanted to get into this, and this is the big issue with this story is there's not a lot of info, and it's really hard to get info, and I don't want to disparage anybody, but some people are saying stuff about it, and I don't know if it's true or not. And a lot of it's on hearsay, and somebody said this, and somebody told me that, and I can't report stuff that just people heard through the grapevine until I can get some sort of confirmation on it. But you've been covering this extensively, and what do you have to tell us about the? Well, why don't we start from the beginning? Coutts Border. During the Freedom Convoy, had what the RCMP want to call a blockade, what the government wants to call a blockade. It was a massive slowdown. It was an inconvenience for everybody. You can have it both ways, right? You can take that rhetoric and spin it both ways. But there was a lot of people who are upset for good reason over the mandates and protesting for that particular reason. Now, the government had a very strong incentive to shut things down, put an end to the whole standoff at Coutts, and in the process, some things went down. And why don't we start from there? Because this is where some of the information I don't know is true, and I don't know what's real. Guns were found, threatening letters were found, or manifestos. I don't know if any of this stuff is true. I can't believe the media. I can't believe what the RCMP is telling us. I can't believe what CISA is telling us. Everything that happened at the inquiry would lead me to think that I'm justified in saying that. So tell us the story.
Well, the first thing I'd like to correct is there's no manifesto or threatening letters in the disclosure provided by the Crown. So if this exists, it's not being used in the
so
court.
That would just be a media spin at this point because it's not listed as documents.
Correct. There's over 3,000 documents and pages, and that's not one of them. There's also no wiretaps, and there's no recordings of the informants at all either.
There's no recording.
So I want correct. So there's a lot of information out there that there's recordings catching them. There's text messages. No, there's 2 RCMP informants that had no recording devices on them. So they gave written affidavits.
So what are the arrests over? Because I know that there was so the timeline that I'm aware of for the Coutts incident, the Coutts blockade, or whatever you want to call it. The timeline that I'm aware of is they were there, everything was good, everything was peaceful, and then one day the RCMP came with a bunch of photographs of guns, and everyone said, I don't want anything to do with this, and that's when everybody said, okay, they threw in the towel and they walked away.
Well, that is how the protest ended, yes.
Okay.
So February 14th, when the press conference came out and the guns were displayed in that photograph, that is when things wrapped up in the Coutts area, yes. But there's a little bit more to how that all rolled out.
Well, fill me in. Let me know. Yeah. How did this happen?
My pleasure, Clyde.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to talk about first is I'm going to start on February 14th when the RCMP officer came out and gave the press conference and explained to Canada exactly what they discovered. She was there, and we can certainly give you the links. She explained to Canada how they captured a group of people within the group, and she called it a separate group from the protest. And she said she had intelligence, that we understand these guys were heavily armed. They were working with a nationwide organization. They had leadership outside of Coutts. She went into quite a bit of detail at about 1 p.m. February 14th, Mountain Standard Time. The time is important, and you're going to see why in a moment. Now, what she was explaining to us was a massive cachet, leadership, a large group coast to coast. You know, she's talking about Diagolong. We'll get into that one.
Oh, well, that's a stretch to call that.
That's the group she was referring to. She was referring to Diagolong, and that's why the patches were in the photograph. That's the connection they made.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah. So I think you already know where we're headed with this.
Okay, but the audience may not. So let's go into it.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there for sure. So February 14th, she made this declaration. You should know how they were actually arrested, when they were arrested, and what they were charged with.
Okay.
So on February 13th at 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, all the times I'm going to give you a Mountain Standard, even though we're going to be dealing with Ottawa at one point as well.
Okay.
So at 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Chris Lysak was on a live stream. He was walking around supporting the protest. There wasn't really much going on, and you'll see in the live stream, it wasn't like crowded shoulder to shoulder. It was just people hanging out. And he made a comment to a police officer along the lines of, "Oh, that's a nice gun. I wish I had one like that." Something along those lines. They arrested him immediately for that comment and called that uttering a threat. So Chris Lysak was arrested February 13th, 9 p.m. and charged with uttering a threat. 50 minutes later,
do we have a like a police statement or a police document for that?
We have the arrest reports. Yeah, all of that's in the disclosure.
And so that's what's being said was said to the officer. That's a nice firearm.
Well, that's actually in his video. He was live streaming at the time, so his live stream is still available, so you can actually check that out.
Oh, okay.
So at that moment, yeah, it's quite amazing how much evidence actually exists that nobody's talking about, and that would be one. So Chris Lysak was live streaming, and at 9 p.m. February 13th, Mountain Standard Time, he was arrested. And again, he was arrested for uttering a threat by making that comment about the weapon.
Right.
And I also want to let you know that charge didn't stay. So uttering a threat is not what he's charged with today.
So that charge dropped, but that was what he was arrested on the 14th for.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then at 9:50, so 50 minutes later,
incidentally, that was the same day that they invoked the Emergencies Act, February 14th.
No, it's the next day, February 14th. We're on the 13th here.
Oh, we're on the 13th. Okay.
Yeah. So on the 13th at 9 p.m., Chris Lysak was arrested for uttering a threat.
Okay, I'm following now.
At 9:50 p.m., Tony Olienick was arrested for mischief. And he too was doing a live stream just before he was arrested. So we know his location and the time. Just before he was arrested, he was actually streaming the officers who actually eventually arrested him. So he was arrested for mischief. Keep in mind, neither one of these men had weapons.
Mm-hmm.
None of the weapons were taken from them at this point. At 12:30 in the morning, February 14th. So now we're on the 14th. Mm-hmm. But we're on at 12:30 in the morning. Chris Carbert was arrested. He was arrested in the trailer, and he had 6 guns with him. This is important. And then about noon, let me go check the time here. At about 12 o'clock noon, February 14th, Jerry was arrested. He was arrested 3 hours away from Coutts, and he was arrested west of Calgary on his way to work. And they picked up 2 guns from him when they arrested him. This is important.
Okay.
Then they put this all together and called it a conspiracy to commit murder. At this time, none of them were charged with that. They were all charged with mischief or uttering a threat. At 12 o'clock, when Jerry was picked up, he's the first one that actually gets a conspiracy to commit murder charge put on him. I'm going to back up a bit. At 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, the RCMP come out and say, we've arrested 4 people, charged them with conspiracy to commit murder, mm-hmm. and they were part of this group. This is what her announcement was. However, it was an hour later that Jerry got picked up and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. So when she gave that statement, He wasn't charged or even picked up yet. At 1:41 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is 3:41 Eastern Standard Time, the PM announced the invocation of the Emergency Act.
Okay.
And then according to the charge records, at 4:58 p.m. Mountain Standard Time is when the other men were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. So at this point, the PM has already invoked the EA, and then 3 of the gentlemen are charged with conspiracy to commit murder. But this is 5 hours after the RCMP declared that they did this, charged them with conspiracy to commit murder. Now, what I'm highlighting here is the entire press conference from the RCMP, at least that portion of it, was highly inaccurate and not justified by the arrest records or the times that were placed in them or the charge records. So we had the arrest record the day before for 2 gentlemen, and then on the 14th for the other 2 gentlemen, and then we have the charge records, which come much later. So what we're highlighting here is some of the information coming out of the RCMP the day of is suspect, according to the information we have. And what it seems like is maybe she didn't have all the information, or they didn't have her story straight, or whatever was going on. But at the time that she declared those statements, these men were not charged with these crimes yet.
So what are they being? They're being held on these charges, and that's what they're being charged with.
Well, they all, we have the charge sheet.
Conspiracy to commit.
That's the main one.
And
murder.
Yeah, and all of them are being charged. And who's the conspiracy against? Who are they conspiring allegedly?
That's a fun one. It's either one or more RCMP officers. The statements have changed. So it's either one or more RCMP officers. Nothing specific, no specific name, no like officer ABC, nothing like that. It's just a general statement that they were going to kill somebody, according to the police.
Right. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. Why are they still being detained?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, now you're bringing up some of the really big questions here. We don't have an answer to that, to be honest with you. They've been through some bail hearings, but we don't have access to certain pieces of information. So there's these documents called information to obtain. And what these are documents written by the police or the Crown when they're trying to get a warrant. And there were several of these documents created in order to get the warrant to search the house in Coutts, which eventually they found 6 guns in the trailer with. Right. These documents are sealed and we can't see them. And these are what were put under a publication ban. So when you hear people talk about a media ban on the Coutts stuff, they're very inaccurate. There's a publication ban on certain documents, but everything else is open. The court is open. It's open to the public, and we can report on everything else. For some reason, the media here in Canada decided to call that a full-on media ban and went silent. Main state media, we get it. We understand why they would do it. But alternate media also did that as well. They haven't been reporting on it until just this week. So I'm not sure if you noticed, but we had a Newsweek article come out. And then since then, True North and Rebel have both been writing and putting out videos and articles on this. And I kind of want to highlight something to you, Clyde. Mm-hmm. The court hasn't changed their mind on this publication ban. It's been set in stone since the beginning because it's the defense who put that in place. What's in place now was what was in place at the beginning. So now that Rebel and the rest are reporting on it, which we're very happy about because we definitely want the reporting to be done, they're reporting under the same conditions they've always been under, which means they could have been reporting the entire time.
Yeah, so I mean, the reason why I haven't reported on this is because all I've been able to get is hearsay, and normally like what I'm doing is I'm taking publications and then I'm unspinning the news. I'll try to get in touch with people on the ground if I can, or look at the whole scenario and see what are the missing parts and what, because most of the media, what they'll do is they'll lie by omission, right? Like you'll get a part of the story and then you'll find the rest of the story somewhere else, and then you can report on its entirety. And that's usually my technique for finding this out. But when nobody else is investigating into it, it's really difficult. And I'm glad that you're digging into this one and bringing this out into the forefront. And finally, I'm able to bring you on the show so you can bring this out. But
well, I didn't quite answer your question though. I apologize. I just realized.
Yeah, I have too many more questions because I'm really curious. Okay. So why is it? Yeah, answer that question, because one thing that's really got me mixed up is we have people with all kinds of heinous crimes, like actual committing of crimes, not conspiring and thinking about and telling people that you would like to commit these crimes, but people who have actually are alleged of committing a crime, alleged to have committed a crime and being let out on bail. And this is kind of famous with the Trudeau's cabinet in Canada, and and many other authorities throughout the country letting people out on heinous things. And why is that not the case in this case?
That's an excellent question, Clyde. And listen, we watched the Public Order Emergency Commission, and this is important because they were able to get the defense for that ready. They were able to tell Rouleau what was going down here and provided that information to him. What we're missing, though, is what's called in camera. So all the stuff that was not shown in public, and in camera means in secret, just so you know term, but that's what it means. So
no, I didn't know that's what that meant. Can you describe like what that actually means?
It just means that there's going to be a meeting behind closed doors and it will not be made public. And they call that in camera. So when you're hearing like the POEC talking, they're like, well, we spoke to the national security in camera. That means in private. It's a weird term.
It's a euphemism.
I didn't on camera.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So it's not something you can review later.
No. So all the information that's been used to hold them in without bail, deny their bail, it's in camera. We don't have those documents. They're sealed and hidden from us. And they're the same documents that were used in the POEC to clear the government that Rouleau got to see. Now, according to Rouleau, during his report, and we have the advantage of having that report, and it's tied to the Coutts thing, everything that was justified to invoke the EA came down to the national security concern stemming from the Coutts guns and the organization that they were associated with, Diagolon, in order to invoke the EA. So all the information that Rouleau got to see about how bad these people were and what evidence that they claimed to have on these gentlemen, he got to see that. But it hasn't been brought out in court. It's not evidence in court, hasn't been challenged by the defense, hasn't even been seen by the defense. But that document was used at the POEC to justify the use of the Emergency Act. Those same documents are also being used to show to the judges here that these are incredibly dangerous men. And those are the documents that are being used to deny bail at this point.
But again, you can't see them.
Well, we can imagine what it says because the RCMP came out and said there's this group, they have leaders, they're national, they're heavily armed. Like everything they said there is likely what's in these documents. We just haven't physically got to see them.
Right. So if you want to paint something as like a group or something like that, you have to define it in specific ways, like legally, right? You have to say it's a group, they have members, they have chapters, they have leadership, there's a criteria before you can say that it's a terrorist group or something or another, anything you want to label them with. How loosely have they defined that? Because I mean, I've talked to Jeremy McKenzie and I've talked to a number of the people from Diagolon, or I mean, it's not even really a thing. Is it really even a thing? All I know about,
I think it's a family, to be honest with you. I think it's a family of like-minded people who are frustrated, but they understand that they have limits on what they should and shouldn't do, including violence, because they've never been charged or even committed violence, this entire group. But I think it's a really cool community. It's more of I would say community than anything else.
So like I've talked with so many people who wear the Diagolon gear and all that stuff, but I didn't know, I didn't see it as like an organization, but just like a bunch of people who like a show on the internet. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like wearing a t-shirt that says Cheers because you like the TV show Cheers or whatever, right? That's all I likened it to. And a bunch of people, I mean, they're politically active people, obviously. So that's...
Well, the good news is the POEC did show that it wasn't what they said it was. So the POEC did not establish Diagolon as anything more than a group of people who haven't been violent and have not overthrown a government. That much came out on the POEC. So that narrative is, established in the POEC as a non-narrative. It's not factually true. So now reverse all the way back to February 2022, when they were using that narrative to put these men in jail. For some reason, that information hasn't made its way to the Alberta courts, that there is no group, there is no leader, there is nobody commanding them, which is what they were saying they were doing. So it's kind of interesting how the POEC has concluded, and they even did a report and cleared themselves. But yet the information used there didn't make its way back to Alberta to assist these gentlemen at all.
Well, even in fact, during Jeremy McKenzie, when he did his testimony for the POEC, I recall there was a point in there where his lawyer was doing his cross examination and asked him about a scenario where there was a bunch of people that introduced themselves in their community as being like gun-toting, want to run around in the woods and fight against the government thing, and he described how himself and members of his community called the RCMP about these people. Like they weren't.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't like these guys. The Diagolon guys are not being like, they're being painted in a certain way, but in practice, they're actually in telling the RCMP when they see stuff that's not kosher, not good, not stuff that should be done, and stuff that they don't want in their community, because they're like, we don't want violence. This is not what's going on. And this is the gist that I got from it, just from the testimony of the so-called leader of Diagolon. For those who don't know, and for people who are just watching this, a little reference on what Diagolon is. It was this comedy skit, essentially.
Yeah, it's a comedy group.
Group, guys that like to talk. It's mixed with political rhetoric and all that stuff in a podcast, but in lots of alcohol fueled as well, comedy stuff.
He used to be. He's been sober since September now.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't aware of that. But the whole
the Pierre joke. You know the Pierre joke he told?
Yeah.
That's the day he quit drinking because he felt bad about that.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I did an interview with him, and we got that information from him because I brought up the joke, and I asked him about the joke. Now, he didn't apologize because he actually stands by his joke. It's a joke. He believes he has the right to tell jokes. Right. He doesn't have to apologize for jokes. But he also believes that maybe he was a little bit too inebriated that night, and that was his last drink that night. Him and Morgan May both gave up alcohol that night.
Both gave up. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Good for him.
They're excellent people. So.
But the gist of what I got, and this is to explain to the audience who don't know,
sorry about that, yeah.
Is that it was this comedy group, and they came up with this idea. Most of the like-minded people live in Flyover Country, which kind of spans from Alaska through Canada all the way to Florida. And they're like, and he drew a line on the map, and it was a diagonal line. He said we should make our own country, Diagolon, and it was a joke. I think the leader of the country is the president's a cocaine addicted goat.
The vice president. Yeah, the vice president is Philip, a cocaine addicted goat. I met him during the interview. He's a jerk. He's not a fun guy. Okay,
so yeah, it's all a joke, and it's all supposed to be in humor, in jest, and yet the government has taken this and ran with it. And I see this, like, it's not very dissimilar to a thing that happened in the United States just around the election of Donald Trump. And that was the Kekistan. It was this whole a very similar thing where they made a internet meme, and it turned into a country flag, and it was not real call to arms or anything, or real call to anything really, except just the joke, and see how many people you could get to buy into the joke. And apparently a bunch of politicians did, including Hillary Clinton, and it was quite embarrassing for anybody who fell for the joke. And Diagolon was much the same. And I think it is very embarrassing. But it's funny how in Canada it turned into this very serious thing with our politicians. And it's not like, and that's not the only thing that's become very serious with these politicians. There was a recent one with Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith. They were photographed with a guy wearing a shirt that said, "Thank a straight person for your existence." Straight pride. Yeah, straight pride. Which again is a joke at the heart of it. I don't think anyone really takes it seriously. But the media does. And the media loves taking these jokes and running them as if they're this big thing. Anyway, I'm rambling about the existence of Diagolon and all of that. So that got tied in with the Coutts Four. Now, these guys are in essentially indefinite detention, not being allowed out for bail. what recourse do we have here? Like we have to wait until their court date to see, so they can see their day in court, and that's that, or?
Well, yeah, you're on the right track. So on Tuesday, July 25th, so next Tuesday, the one coming up, is their next court date. I'll be there, so I'll be covering it in Lethbridge all 4 days, and we're going to make sure that we get that information out now. So for all the time prior to now, we had loose information, but now I'm going to be there getting information. I'm going to tell you what's going on, though, on the 25th. It's kind of important, and you're going to probably like this. Before I go there, though, I just want to say one more thing about Diagolong.
Yeah, sure.
Diagolong, yes, you said Alaska all the way down to Florida. But what the press said and what the government said was Jeremy's intent was to make that white people only, so white supremacists.
Oh, of course. Yeah, they always tie this. It's just more.
And I also want to include one more thing. If this was Jeremy's plan, living in Nova Scotia, which is not part of that white area at all, it's the other side of the country, would be a weird place to have your leader. Just putting it out there. Yeah, he didn't even live in the white area.
People are sick of it, though. I mean, this whole like cries of white supremacy and stuff. I mean, people have tried to label me that. I mean, my wife is from Japan. I mean, it's ridiculous.
My wife's from Nigeria, dude. Yeah, I do too.
Right. So I mean, and what Jeremy, when he was doing this podcast, his best friend who was podcasting with him was a black man. I mean, like,
yeah,
it's
the accounting guy,
and of course, immediately they'll come at you. Like as soon as you get on the defensive, people will say, "Oh, you've tokenized these people, and that's what you're doing." I don't even have time for that. It's
insane. It's insane. Remember the Hong Kong made Heil Hitler? Remember how she said that?
I do recall. I mean, that became a meme itself because it's so out to lunch.
That's the type of people.
It's so out to lunch. I mean, that stuff, like, let racism die where it belongs. I mean, that's where it belongs. I mean, in the grave, because
for sure.
And we've moved so far past days where real racism existed. And we should let it die. We should really let it die because our country, I mean, it doesn't take you much to just go travel around Canada and realize that sentiment doesn't exist here.
It's a great country.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't anywhere. I've never personally seen it other than bad jokes from time to time, but that would be it. I haven't personally seen that anywhere in Canada. Yeah. I've seen it in the United States when I visit there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I the parts of the States that I've been to, I haven't seen it, but I need to travel a little more.
It's not bad. It's not bad though. Yeah. But I'm going to get to this court thing for you.
Yes.
So on June 29th was a very interesting day for the men and the entire matter, actually. So the lead crown, so the deputy, let me get his proper title here so I have it for you. Deputy Chief Prosecutor of Alberta Prosecution Services. His name is Steve Johnson. So he's the lead prosecutor, the lead crown on this. On the 29th of June, he was no longer in the court. And neither was his sidekick, the second in command. Neither one of them were in court. It was a third gentleman there from the Crown's office sitting there, wondering what's going on, because they got notice that Steve Johnson is not welcome in the court, and neither is his sidekick. What happened was the Crown's office, and you're going to like this, they were playing games. So they gave disclosure last hour, really. And the defense caught wind of something missing. So they said, look, you didn't provide this disclosure. And then in a rush, in a haste, the Crown provided that disclosure because, of course, the judge is like, you must. But they didn't redact that package. There was stuff in that package that they redacted previously, but not in the package they gave to the defense. So the defense recognized the value of this information that was unwittingly provided. And we now understand that it's very, very important information. We don't know exactly what it is because it's under seal. But what it did do was the prosecutor could not be in the court anymore. There's a rule in the court that witnesses cannot sit during the proceedings until they're called as a witness. He's now been referred to as a witness in this proceeding, so he cannot sit in the court anymore, and neither can his sidekick. So there's a third Crown who's now involved in the case. At this time, it was made clear that the RCMP, if they want to see the contents of this sealed envelope, they have to get counsel or lawyer up. And the Law Society of Alberta is now involved, taking a close look at misconduct for a lawyer. We don't know the name of that lawyer, but we do know that they are now involved. This has caused the defense to file what's called a CC1, which is an application in criminal court to do something. Now, again, these are under seal, so we don't know what they're asking for. But what we do know is that Steve Johnson will not be at court. He can't go back to court because they are now also saying he may be a possible defendant in this matter. So, whatever that means, we're going to find out on the 25th.
Whoa. That's
so we believe
really big.
Yes. Now, from our side, we're incredibly excited. The men are excited. The defense team is excited. They know what is in there. The men know what's in there. We just can't release that information.
Okay.
It's under seal right now.
So it's under seal. And,
but
and you don't personally know any of this information. So.
No, I personally don't know what's in it, but I do know it was an inadvertent disclosure. So a redacted document wasn't redacted accidentally, I guess you can say.
Wow. Now we've heard, I've been following these cases for a while now. You hear about Tamara Lichen, Chris Barber's case, and just the sloppiness of the Crown prosecutors in that case, and not only sloppiness, but the vindictiveness, it seems, and I'm trying not to make accusations here, like, because I'm not in that position to accuse anyone of anything, but it doesn't seem right the way the courts are behaving.
I got 2 more nuggets for you here, Clyde.
Okay.
I got 2 more, because these are the ones that made Viva Frei's eyebrows raise up this morning. So I was on the show this morning, and we talked about this in depth as well. And there was 2 parts that really interest him. The next one was the picture of the guns. So there's 15 of them on that table.
Okay, so I wanted to get into that. 6 of them,
yeah, 6 of them are accounted for the men. The other 9, we still don't know through disclosure who owned what. So there's 9 weapons on that table that we were shown. We don't know the owner of them. The other 6, one of them is a handgun, which is restricted and requires a restricted PAL, and it was loaded. So this is what's causing problems for one of the gentlemen. The other 5 weapons are long guns, unrestricted long guns, 22s. They're all legal. They're completely legal. Mm-hmm. So on that table of 15 weapons that you see, only 6 of them are attributed to the men who are in jail. The other 9 are attributed to other people. We don't know who. Right. And of those 6, 5 of them are incredibly legal. So there's one gun that is questionable because it's a handgun. It has to be stored away. It can't have ammunition in it. So there's a problem around that. Mm-hmm. But all 4 men are charged with the same gun crime here. And then the next piece of this is gun number 8. So if you count the guns from left to right, gun number 8 is a military style AR-15, I believe it is. That gun's not available in the public. It's very difficult to get your hands on. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it.
It's a military style AR-15, so it's
correct.
It has full auto capabilities.
No, not full auto, but it's under the Order in Council prohibited weapon. So it's not full auto, but it's one of the guns that are listed under that Order in Council to be prohibited.
Oh, okay.
Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's very difficult for citizens to get their hands on that one.
Right.
However, that is an RCMP issued style gun. We don't know if it's that one specifically, but we have pictures of RCMP training equipment, including that particular weapon. The same model,
so there's because forgive me if I'm jumping to conclusions.
Maybe the table had something, but I don't know. It's not one of the men's weapons.
So forgive me if I'm jumping to conclusions, and I read so many comments, countless comments when this picture was published, and it was all over Twitter. It was all over the media. This picture of these guns, and I need to pull up a picture of it, but it was sus, to say the least.
Oh, for sure.
Everybody was commenting on this, like, what? Where did this come from? This is so out of left field. It didn't seem right, and not only that, but people were looking at it going, a lot of people were saying, half those guns I own. You know what I mean? Like, people were actually saying that.
There's a 22 there. Yeah, these are just normal weapons. There's nothing dangerous or scary about them. They're all legal except for the 2 handguns and that one gun, number 8.
I'm going to try to find a picture of it. Coutts, guns.
Well, while you're doing that, let me tell you about the next part that raised Viva's eyebrow. So do you remember the massacre in Nova Scotia where the guy dressed up as an RCMP officer and went around cause some
Yes.
damage and hurt some people? All
Yes.
right. Um, so we have a recording of Brenda Lucky, who reached out to the Nova Scotia Department for the RCMP. And in this recording, she's requesting from them a list of the weapons that were used. And she does say she wants to use it for political reasons. The officers or the investigators on the recording said, absolutely not. We have an open investigation. We have no idea if there's accomplices. We need to investigate this. So we are not releasing this information to the public yet. But in Alberta, they released it within an hour. They put it all on a table. They're telling the entire public without doing DNA, without bagging it up, without treating this as proper evidence, because it should be processed on the scene as evidence, which means it's bagged up with gloves. They're going to dust it for prints.
Absolutely.
They're going to check for DNA. None of that was done. And none of that can be done because of the way they handled the weapons and staged that photo.
Right,
because
there's
now. The weapons
chain of
touching each
command.
other.
There's a chain of command that you have to follow in
custody. It's called. Yeah, it's called the chain of custody.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's a chain of custody. Yeah. I have the image here. So,
yeah, there it is.
There it is. This is this layout, this display to show the media and basically scare people. I mean, they 100%. They even included it looks like a large like bush knife. As if
yeah, there's a machete there. There's bear spray there. There is buckshot. There's birdshot.
Those are all just. I mean, if you're an avid woodsman, I mean, that's just the thing. To throw that out there is just, it's like it's almost like propaganda. That's what a lot of people felt when they saw this image.
Correct.
What is this?
No.
There's one on there that looks like a Chris Vector. Is that what that is?
Yeah, it is, and that's completely legal. Yeah, it is a Chris Vector.
I didn't know those are legal in Canada. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Yeah, it's actually a very nice gun, but it is legal. And there's a whole bunch of things wrong with this picture. This is not how you handle evidence as a police officer. So we have a ex-police officer on our show every morning talking about this. His name's Donald Best, and he's a corruptions investigator, and he worked for Toronto Police Services for 15 years. He sees this picture, and he's like, this is not professional in any way, shape, or form. The weapons can fall down off the table. You bump the table. They're touching each other. There's no way to DNA any of this anymore. There's no way to swab this stuff anymore. It's completely just laid out in what he calls a propaganda staged photo. And I believe that's exactly what it is, because this is not RCMP procedure. RCMP procedure is not to give out this information until your investigation is done. Now, if you look at the Nova Scotia one and contrast it to this one, the Nova Scotia one, they said we were looking for accomplices. On this one, they said there's accomplices. They said in the press release that this is a huge group. There's people we haven't captured yet. So in the investigation, or for the benefit of the investigation, they should have been at least not telling everybody what guns they had and continue to search for these accomplices before they start providing all this information like they did with the Nova Scotia incident. But unfortunately, in Alberta, they handled it very differently. They did this photo. I also want to highlight one more thing about this photo. There's a lot of people saying that this photo is fake, and there's this photo, that's not true. We've gone through enough of this to know which items do belong to the men. We won't go into detail about that because that's for the defense to do.
Right.
But we have confirmed that this photo is genuine. It's from February 14th, but it's definitely a staged photo that they wanted you to see. But it's not a fake. There's some rumors out there that there's a fake version of this.
Yeah, it just feels so suspect in this whole thing, and that's what I felt like, and this is why I can't really report on all this stuff because it's gut feeling a lot of it, and I'm not a police officer. I was never trained in law enforcement, so I don't know the chain of custody when it comes to evidence. I mean, we've all seen photos like this when it comes to drug seizures. Sure.
And we spoke to Rick Abbott. So he was a police officer from the Edmonton Police Services who was fired. We can get into that. But yeah, he said the same thing. This is not the right way to do the evidence. This is completely incompetent, and this has got to be staged because you can't even process this stuff as good evidence anymore.
It's unbelievable. Really so it can't even be used against them. So the fact that they're still in jail is just unbelievable to me.
Yeah, they're in jail, I believe, because of what the court was told. The same thing that Rollo was told, that it was beyond a doubt. We have plenty of intelligence. This is definitely an active organization that's ready to start taking people out. fast forward 523 days, because that's how many days they've been in there. We're hearing a lot different stories. We're not seeing the evidence in the disclosure. There was no wiretaps. There was no recordings of the informants. They didn't even. That's another thing that Donald Best highlighted to us, because there was 2 female informants, and we've seen pictures of them. They're small little ladies. They look young. They're attractive. That whole thing. But what Donald explained to us is there's no way the police send somebody in without wires. There's no way. For their safety alone, they're listening. For collecting of the evidence for the conversation, it's being recorded. That didn't happen in this case for some reason, and we're not sure why.
So I'm going to get to just a couple of super chats here real quick before we continue with this.
Sure.
We got I'm Not Your Buddy Guy with a $10 super chat saying, this disappointed me. She should have said Canadians are suffering from poverty and depression. The Prime Minister is trying to shut down the energy industry, and you care more about a T-shirt, really, in response to
For Pierre.
with Daniel Smith being asked about that as well. Same super chatter. I'm Not Your Buddy Guy with another $5 super chat saying Canada's judicial system is looking more and more like Soviet show trials. Definitely not good sign for those of us hoping Canada won't go commie. And that's it's I don't even know to say that, because we even had a lieutenant in the United States come forward and say, like, we're standing with you, Canada, as your prime minister is making accusations of us meddling in your foreign affairs, even though it's you.
Right.
It's your people. It's your people that are standing up against the Canadian government in this. But so there's so much to cover on this story, and it just keeps going all over the place. Now, there was a report that came out a few months ago, and I noticed Rebel News covered this, but no one else touched it, and I was waiting on it because I don't know when people make claims and there's no evidence yet. I stay away from it. But there was a woman who made a claim that she had footage, like
audio.
It was an audio footage. She had proof, she said, that the RCMP had planted guns. And what happened from that? Because it disappeared. It went away and never came back.
Yeah. So she recanted that statement. So people are repeating that statement, but she's recanted it. She's clarified it. She said she doesn't believe they planted. She just said they brought in weapons into her home. We have a copy of the recording, but the recording is not part of disclosure. Neither side's trying to use it because it has no value for any side. What is going on there is this is the internet running with the misinformation. There is nothing there. There was no recording of anybody planting anything, nor does it matter, quite frankly, because the information we do have in the disclosures isn't enough, I think, for them to be charged with anything. Because what we do have is only 6 guns are attributed to the men that are on that table. 2 other guns that are not on that table were taken away from Jerry in his truck the next day after that photo was taken. And these guns are legal. So we don't have a concern, like from the defense side, about how the guns got to that table. We know where they were. 6 of the guns were with in the trailer with Chris, and the other 9 guns came from somewhere else and put together on that table. So what Joanne is probably referring to there is them collecting all the guns into one spot. But in either case, it doesn't show planting. It doesn't show anything like that, or the audio. I mean, it doesn't say anything like that. It's just misinformation is being spread around. So thank you for bringing that one up, because we really want to see that one go down and stop, because we're fielding that one all the time. So it's taking resources to address.
It's another one that I didn't want to report on until I knew it to be accurate. And again,
your gut was right on that.
Yeah, well, right, because those are accusations. Those are really strong accusations too, to accuse an RCMP officer of planting evidence.
And that doesn't help us, because if they say, well, no, we didn't, and here's the proof, well, then are we all lying? No, it doesn't help us. Another one that I'd like to put an end to is the diagonal patches in that photo. So there's rumors that it was placed there by the RCMP onto that vest. That's not true. So we do know the person who handed out the patches, and he was handing out a whole bunch just to anybody that wanted them. They come in a pack of 2. And yeah, They just put one on the vest. Again, it doesn't mean anything because it's not a terrorist group like they keep saying, but we can put an end to that rumor. It wasn't planted, and it doesn't need to be planted anyways. But what is important is they definitely took a narrative. They made it look dangerous with all these guns. Only 6 of them are for these men. The other 9, we don't even know who owns them, and made it look like something it's not. So that's true. And we do contend that it is a staged photograph, and it is propaganda. But we can confirm it is a legit photograph. So that was taken on February 14th. The diagonal patches were on the vest, not placed there. And there is no audio recording that says there's anything planted. Those are all false.
So are the guys able to speak with people? Are they able to communicate?
Yeah, I speak to them all the time. Yeah. I get calls from them from between noon and 1. Chris Carbert will call me because that's his window. Between 1 and 3, Jerry can call. Chris Lysak can call whenever he gets out because they're in solitary. So they get 2 hours outside of their cell, 22 hours in their cell. But they do call. And I also have access to an app.
That's torture.
Where we can do text messages. I'm just getting started on the torture, my friend, because they're in remand. I want you to understand, this is not prison. Prison would be an upgrade from remand. In the Canadian court system, we credit you for time served 2 to 1 for time served in a remand. So every day you're in a remand, you get credited 2 days because that's so inhumane to be in a remand center. The reason is
so they've been in for over 500 days, but in
523 days.
So technically it would be 1,046.
Yeah, 1,046. That would be what they're credited for as time served. Because in Canada, we've recognized it's a human right that this is a really bad place to be. Now, let me tell you some of the reasons why it's a bad place to be.
Well, I think it's recognized that solitary confinement over a period of time is considered torture. Like that is torture. Well, we're social animals, and psychology will dictate that we're social animals and we need to be around other people, or it can be detrimental to our emotional, our mental and physical health.
No, you're not wrong about that, but it's even worse because solitary confinement does exist in prison as well. In remand, they don't have the setup for long term. You don't get your own cell. You're moved around all the time. You don't know when you're coming out. This is like purgatory because they don't know a date when they're coming out. And there is no conjugal visits. You can't get that in prison. You can't get that here. You do not get access to all the medication that you need. For example, Chris Lysak has knee injuries. This guy's a large guy. He's got some knee injuries, and he takes supplements for it prior to be put into jail. But supplements are not available through Alberta Health Services. Because of that, it's not available in the prisons or the remand centers either. So he's had to, suffer. Yesterday, Chris Lysak got his contact lenses. It took 1.5 years. So now he gets to see. He hasn't been able to see for 1.5 years. These are not how people should be treated. And I really could go on. I'll just give you some of the good stuff. So we got text messages from all 4 of the gentlemen, and we read them out loud on our show today because Friday is Friends and Family Day. We invite friends and family on, and we talk about the men. Mm-hmm. And they provided us all with a message to Canada. You can find this on my Twitter. I read it out loud. For example, Tony was excited and happy about sunlight coming through, hitting the wall, and for 30 minutes he got to watch it. That excited him. Chris Carbert told me about watching a grasshopper. He named it. Yep. Jerry was talking about how he saw a magpie eating and feeding its young and how beautiful that was because he could see it through the window. These are men who are looking for the beauty everywhere they can because this is where they're at. And none of them have any hate or anger towards even the government or the legal system. They're all waiting for their time. They believe they're innocent, and it's just a matter of time to come out. Even Chris Carbert said, when I get out, I want to start helping people because this was a horrible place. Jerry had to explain to his wife how come he was emotionally upset because he watched somebody get beat down while the guards watched. Like, this is their world right now.
And that's not even prison. It's not even...
No, it's remand. Yeah. And we're hearing stories out of the gentlemen, many of them. Hardened criminals will come in, they're big, tough guys, and then they get out, and then they come back. So sometimes they come back, repeat offenders.
Yeah.
And the repeat offenders are saying, why are you guys still here? Just call a lawyer. You can get out in no time. even the criminals and repeat offenders and hardened criminals are confused why these gentlemen are still there.
Well, if you, I had Aaron Gunn on a few times. He's done some amazing
He's a wonderful man.
documentaries, and he was he in his documentary "Canada is Dying." He talked extensively about that, and he had a bunch of people from the government, from the Conservative Party, come on, and talk about just why it's so easy for violent offenders, repeat violent offenders, to just get out, no problem. And to hear that these men have been in for 523 days. It's just beyond me. It's just beyond me. This isn't Canada. This isn't the Canada that I remember. That we've all, we all have this like idea of what government is and what they're allowed to do, what they're capable of doing, and they've broken all of the trusts that we have with them at this point.
You're not wrong. And Donald puts it best when he says everybody in Canada gets bail. So there's a police officer who was murdered. The accuser is out on bail in Toronto. As you saw, the Antifa guy who drove over people in Winnipeg. We saw that video. He had bail within a week. Everybody in Canada gets bail because we are innocent until proven guilty, except for these four: Tamara Lynch, Chris Barber, Jeremy McKenzie. These people are all being charged and sometimes held.
Pat King,
way beyond what's
Pat
normal.
King.
Pat King. Yes,
I'm not the biggest fan of his rhetoric and the stuff he says, but he didn't break any laws. I mean, well, you should at least have your trial before you start penalizing people. Well, and then they drag that out, right? Oh, we're our judicial system's so overloaded.
No, it's a horrible setup, man. And the way we're looking at it is, they've been scared. I believe the judges have been scared by what's in those packages because they were told by the national security people, this is very, very real. And I believe they believed that. But now with this accidental disclosure, and we believe it's related to the warrant and how they got the warrant, it's being looked at now by the judge, and he's expedited things. So we're kind of optimistic that at least we'll get bail. This is what everybody's hoping for, is bail, so that they can get on with their lives while they get on with that trial.
Can people write them?
Absolutely. So go to the Facebook group called Alberta Political Prisoners. This is run by Granny Mackay, and on there's instructions on how you can write to the men. It's fairly simple.
Is there instructions where people don't use Facebook?
Sorry, what was that?
For people
who don't use Facebook?
Yeah, people who don't use Facebook.
So
Meta's kind of a dying company. Like, a lot of people are leaving it.
Sure, but Alberta, there's a lot of people here that are on it still. It's the most predominant platform around here.
Okay, fair enough.
GrannyMackay.ca is another place. I can give you the links after the show.
Yeah, because I'd like to put that in the description for this, so people can go and check that out. And because I think nothing would be more helpful in this situation than people to actually write letters to these. I mean, if they're naming crickets.
Yeah, the grasshopper. Yeah, I could look it up. I could get his name for you. But yeah, I read that. I'm like, this is a man looking for beauty wherever he can.
Yeah. So why don't we mail them some? They can't deprive them of that.
Well, the good news is you can, and lots do come in. So even one time, and this is the stuff that makes them laugh and make them happy. But two of them in the Lethbridge had to, as their job, go through the mountain of mail they get. They are definitely getting.
Let's make that mountain bigger. Let's make it bigger.
For sure. and on that note, I have 4 tweets that are on my Twitter right now. A message from each man, and inside of that message are instructions on how to contact the Minister of Justice of Alberta to go ahead and send a polite message to him to make him understand what you think about what you see going on.
Well, yeah, if you're writing letters, do that as well. Yeah, I totally agree with that. The whole concept of keeping things polite, because there's a time to get all, pissed off and say things. And I'm a mechanic. I'm a roughneck when it comes down to it.
Sure.
But I turn the camera on and I talk as if there's kids in the room, because that's That's just
sometimes there are.
Because there is. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
When people are watching on their phone or they're watching on their TV, they're watching on their computer, and the kids can walk in the room and stuff. So I try to keep the swears to a minimum or not at all if I can do. And I always try to do things that way. So why not do it the same way when you're trying to talk to an official that you're saying you're trying to convince them to do things a different way. Yeah, please be polite in that process.
Yeah. Polite's a good way to do it. You can say I'm frustrated instead of peed off. And I think that this needs improvement instead of tear it down, stuff like that.
Yeah, I never really went with that tear it down rhetoric anyway.
Some people do, though. So I prefer they didn't. Well, not helpful.
So I've always been a fan of, how freedom came to North America in the first place and the history behind it. And before we had our successful experiment and the United States had their successful experiment, the French tried. And they tried, and what they did was they tore it down. They tore it down, and we all know where the expression "heads rolled" came from. It came from that. And you be careful what you wish for, because if you tear it all down, sometimes what you get in return isn't all that you hoped it would be. And that's what the French found out in that case, because they tore it all down and they got another king, an emperor, right? And we don't want that. And it came with the promise of liberty, right? So be very careful about that stuff. So I think we have an excellent system in Canada. There's problems. Obviously, there's issues with the whole Western alienation. There's all kinds of issues. We have our issues, and we can reform those issues. But tearing it all down, I don't really get behind at all. And speaking of which, let's talk a little bit more about you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you're running. You're in the running to become an MP of where?
Correct. Yellowhead, Alberta. So west of Edmonton, all the way to Jasper, from Edson down to Rocky Mountain House. That would be the Yellowhead area. It includes Drayton Valley.
So what got you into politics? Made you want to run? Because that's a big step. I'm a guy who comments about it, and people are like, Clyde for MP or whatever. No, that's not me. I'm the guy that talks about the MPs. I'm not the MP. So what made you want to take that jump?
Well, I'm an introvert, and I'm a computer guy that went to law school. That's kind of my history. I'm a little bit of an overachiever. I'm a pilot, and I do a bunch of other fun things. But I was homesteading, homeschooling, homesteading, building a homestead when the convoy happened. Now, I had no political ambitions. I just want to build my homestead and get on with life. But after what we saw with the EA and the results and the outcome of invoking that EA, Trudeau on February 22nd stood on TV and en français said, if you don't like what I did here, run against me.
Well, he said that.
I said, okay.
Yeah.
If you go to my YouTube, I have a video about it. Yeah, and it was en français, so you'd have to either hit the translation or understand it. But it says, if you don't like what I did here, run against me. That's what you need to do, because this is how democracy works.
So I said, sure. I really hate that. I really hate that, because we're a nation of laws. We're not a nation of political whim. And that's what that tells me. That tells me that we have a ruling political elite that feel that they're deserving of their whim. And honestly, and yes, I hope you're successful in running in this. But
thank you.
And we'll get back to. I just wanted to say this because I'm so fervent about this fact. The Trudeau government and his cabinet have been, especially during the COVID pandemic, decrees, executive privilege, executive orders,
order in council, order in council,
pushing on laws essentially that weren't laws. They didn't establish this and run with it in Parliament. They didn't have it passed through the parliamentary process, and yet he has the gall to go around and tell people that there's a backsliding of democracy and that there's misinformation and disinformation and all of this stuff, all his platitudes that he says. And this is why people are so absolutely frustrated with this man, and not only him, but all of his cohorts, his whole ilk. And this is completely un-Canadian. This is unbecoming of a Western nation. This is unbecoming of anyone who says that they stand for the principles of a Western democracy, a Western civilization, the ideas of liberty, especially someone from the Liberal Party. It's in the name. It's in the name, liberal. And a lot of people will say like I'm a conservative, and maybe I align more with the conservatives as today, but I've always considered myself a liberal in the classical sense because most of the stuff that I read, like I said, going back to the French scholastics, all the way to modern days through, the experiment in the United States with Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. These men were brilliant minds. John Locke, brilliant minds that came up with this whole system and this idea of liberty, this experiment. And you have these people in the name of liberty dismantling it before our eyes and flaunting it. And doing things like what just came out today. I didn't have time to talk about it, but the mootness. There was a case. I'll pull it up here. This is a story from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Right. Arrive Can mootness appeal dismissed. So the idea here is that they brought a court case against the government for this being not constitutional. You can't have this Arrive Can app. This doesn't work. Well, as soon as it finally gets to the court, they pull it, and then they say, "Oh, it's moot. Yep. We don't want to have this legal battle." Well, we want our day in court. We want our precedent, so that the future administrations can't do this kind of thing. But no, what do we get? We get a mootness, and then when we appeal it, they just dismiss that. And it's not just this case. It was Brian Peckford's case. This is the second time they've done this, right? Yeah. So you're just as aware of this as I am, but
for sure. Moon, they absolutely should complete the decision, even if they pulled it. But there's a reason for all that. I can explain some of that if you like.
Yeah. Actually, could you?
Yeah. Well, I am a trained paralegal, so I do have my law degree from Ontario. And the federal courts, the judges have to live within 50 minutes or 45 minutes or 50 minutes of downtown Ottawa. So all federal judges are in the Ottawa area. That's not a good thing.
No.
That's not a good thing. That's where they're all bilingual. That's where they all know each other. That's where they all hang out, grow up. They're lawyers and then judges. They all know each other, get appointed. But federal judges have to live within 50 minutes of Ottawa.
So what would it take to change that
area? Reform. Every province should be doing their own federal judges. Yeah, we should be assigning our own federal judges on a provincial level.
Yeah,
for sure.
I would
at least.
I would agree with that. But so I'm always concerned. I'm always concerned because like the whole tear it down argument. If you open up like a constitutional challenge, for example, or a constitutional convention where you open up the Constitution, be careful. Because this is the time where you can have guys like Trudeau and Trudeau's daddy who put in stuff like which daddy? right. Okay, well, his official one. Anyway, the one who put in the notwithstanding clause that made our Charter of Rights and Freedoms toothless entirely.
Completely useless. And the Americans are surprised we have that notwithstanding clause. I had a conversation with a gentleman from the United States who says, "Don't you have freedom of speech?" I'm like, "Yeah, but we also have a pause button called the notwithstanding clause that the government can push anytime they want."
Well, it's useless. Exactly what it is. It's essentially just you have these rights, the fundamental, inalienable, God-given rights, up until the point where it's inconvenient for us. Well, it should be inconvenient for the government. It should be inconvenient.
The
point. That's the only time that you would need it. Because every other time it's not contested. Why do you even write it down on paper?
You understand? Yeah, it's insane. And also, what's insane is the ability to give immunity. So as we saw with the banks when they closed down bank accounts and shut down bank accounts, they got immunity, and immunity is nothing more than a free pass on breaking the law. So
Yes.
we shouldn't have that either.
No, we shouldn't have that at all. And this is
No.
what I worry about if, like, say Trudeau is in government and they decide to have a constitutional convention. It's like, how bad is this going to get? I mean, we're talking about a cabinet where David Lametti has openly said that Canadians don't have fundamentally a right to property.
Right.
How can you have a market economy? How can you have investors want to come to Canada with a attorney general that says Canadians don't fundamentally have a right to property?
Yeah, but you understand you're just one step away from you'll own nothing and be happy. You've heard that before,
Yeah,
right?
of course, and the whole audience has too. And
that's not fiction. That's not fiction.
no, it's not fiction, and it doesn't. Most people don't realize that, like, when we were having our hippie days in China, they had the color revolution, and they were starving when we were doing flower power. What and I know, like, a lot of people will say, like, oh, you're being hyperbolic, Clyde. You know, there's a lot of, hyperbole and all this stuff. No, these policies have real implications, and they have real dangers, and central authorities will absolutely destroy the economy. And what do? What happens when economies are destroyed? People starve. And it's real, and it's not like it only happened once in China. It was only a few decades before that it happened in Russia. I mean, and we just never learn the lesson. We just keep wanting to try it, right? Just try it out. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's get back to you.
No, you're not, because our government just was proud that they've handed out food stamps to Canadians. Like, they're very happy to provide food to the starving in Canada and make a press release out of it. But when you zoom out, oh my gosh, we have to provide food to Canadians now.
No, that's not what their job is. That's not their job. Their job is to get out of the way so people can provide for themselves. And that's
I would love that.
That's ultimately, I mean, what is a government's ultimate duty? And I'm not an anarchist, right?
Sure.
Right? Like, I do believe that there's a role for government, but I just feel it's a much more minimal role than what's been happening. This trend is just absolutely ridiculous worldwide, where governments are getting bigger and bigger and more involved in people's lives every day. Government's role is to protect their borders, a federal government anyway.
Correct. I would agree with that. It's the security of the nation. That's about it. There's not much more.
Yes. And then provincial governments, and then, your municipal governments, they have different roles. There's policing, there's all kinds of other things. But yeah, the federal government, if they're not protecting, and that's the one thing they're not doing.
100%.
All the things that they're involved in.
Well, look, according to our own government, a couple truckers and a couple bridges was enough to bring us to a crawl and almost destroy the entire economy. According to them, that's how close to collapse we are. I don't think they're doing a good job.
No, they're not doing a good job at all. They're not good. No. Holy cow! And it was actually there. I was paraphrasing at one point Rouleau in saying that, so the decision was made that Canada's government was inept at all levels, so therefore we needed to give it more power so that inept power could take things under control. And that's really what they did at that point. Of course, that's paraphrasing. He said it in a much nicer way.
And his paraphrase, he said all of that, and I'm also scared of what I can't tell you about, because there's some in-camera stuff. So that's a little caveat that he didn't say out loud, because he made his decision based off of the in-camera national security concerns that we never got to see.
This is unbelievable, and all the stuff that we're hearing about China as well. Hey, let's get back to you. So you're looking to run for office, and you're running as an independent.
I'm a registered independent. Yep, I've been doing it for a year now. I was offered the position with the PPC. I entertained that for a little bit. I believe the right path forward is an independent. I can certainly work with PPC and other parties, but in order to be a good representation of my constituents, I don't need party whips and I don't need a party platform to stand in the way of what my constituents need. I just need to win this election and get in there and be the voice that they need for Yellowhead, because we definitely do not have that voice today.
So historically, what sort of demographic is being voted in there? Like, or sorry, what parties does the demography there tend to lean towards in your?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. So currently, it's very blue, so very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
However, Yellowhead is where Joe Clark came from, so our prime minister. So the prime minister from Alberta came from Yellowhead. Preston Manny also ran for Yellowhead. So we actually have a reform / not really completely conservative mentality here, because we like to be independent. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have the demographic in Yellowhead to take a chance on independent. Now, we certainly won't put in Liberal here or NDP. That simply won't happen.
Yeah.
But the PPC placed second in the last election, so there's an appetite for something other than the CPC here.
Yeah, and what's the sentiment with the PPC at the moment? Because I mean, Bernier's run what four times now, and hasn't elected anyone in any regions.
Well, yeah, so the PPC party have not gotten a seat, and they're going to try again on Monday, the 24th, in Calgary Heritage with Kerry Lorenz.
Okay.
So he's running. Yeah, there's another by-election on Monday. But, look, you bring up a really good point. It's a 5-year-old party. They've gained 5% support. I'm not here to tote the PPC, but I'm happy to talk about their successes and their challenges. And absolutely. Max has a very difficult time west with his accent, and believe it or not, that does play a role.
It does,
Quebec and Alberta. Yeah, unfortunately, it does play a role. But there's a lot of indoctrinated party politics around here about vote splitting, and Alberta actually had the NDP get in because it looked like maybe people were strategically voting. So there's a lot of paranoia in Alberta that the Liberal Party or the NDP party can pick up seats here. But I've been talking to a lot of my neighbors, and the issues around mandates, the issues around vaccine harm, the issues around gender ideology, and all those other issues have really, really put a spotlight on the CPC for not standing up for us here. So a lot of people around here are looking for other options. Now, an independent can come in and represent everybody. I can represent you if you're in the NDP party. I can represent you if you're liberal or conservative. I get to represent everybody. That's the beauty of an independent. And I think it's time for. Here's what I talked to Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson today. So I interviewed her today, and I pitched to her the idea of the PPC and independents kind of getting together and actively trying to replace the NDP as the balance of power in the West. So right now, the NDP party hold that position. They're the balance of power. And most of that is in the West. So I would like to see the PPC and independents replace the NDP as the balance of power. If we're able to do that, I believe we can help shepherd the Conservative Party. So I do believe they're going to get a minority government. But being a minority government means there is going to be a balance of power. So I would prefer it's not NDP. I prefer it's another option. So I think this next election, we may have an opportunity to pick up a few seats with independent PPC with that goal in mind. And it may take 2 elections to accomplish that goal. But the idea here is if we can shepherd the Conservative Party or anchor them in some conservative values, they will stop drifting towards the left, ideally. And there's no way to do that if there is no independent balance of power, frankly. I don't think Conservative or Liberal Party will listen to anybody. So, for example, the Liberals have the NDP partnership right now, which is causing us not to be able to do an election, hold the Prime Minister responsible for any of his stuff, because he's got a deal in place with Singh.
Right.
So we can't do a no confidence vote. That kind of thing should never happen. That should never happen. So the balance of power.
Wasn't there a law years ago that couldn't happen? Like, wasn't there a thing where they could be punished for?
Well, they started the coalition. They didn't call themselves a coalition, so they're being very careful not to be called a coalition.
It is a coalition
because there are. Right, but if it is a coalition, then you're correct. There's rules around it. If it's not a coalition, it's just an agreement. That's how they got around that. And I'm
I
telling you,
hate politics. I mean, I cover politics, but it just frustrates me so much that you could just, yeah, okay, well, it's not a coalition. Yeah, all right, fair, whatever. That's so frustrating. But yeah,
yeah,
okay, so
and
they've done that. But so
yeah,
interesting dynamic, because I've said this too, that the PPC has a perfect opportunity to come in and take the votes from disaffected NDPs. Because here's the thing,
sure, yeah, there's a
NDP,
bunch. That's where they get, yeah,
and correct me if I'm wrong, NDP, they have two types of voters. They have people who are very into the NDP platform, and they are because of a myriad of reasons. Working class, union types, people are disaffected by, buy into some of the left-wing propaganda even, and they like the NDP platform. Then you have disaffected liberals, people who would always vote liberal. They never vote conservative because they hate the conservatives for whatever reason, branding or propaganda, whatever. Wise, they don't like the conservatives, so they'll always vote left, but they'll vote NDP while holding their nose at the liberals, right? And that's the thing. The NDP now have stabbed both groups in the back. They've said to the NDP people who support the platform, they said, you know what, forget it. We're just going to hold on to power. That's all we're going to do. We're not going to give you any of the things that you're looking for, except for the most impoverished people. But that's not everybody. And they threw it out for the disaffected liberals. Disaffected liberals voted for them so that they wouldn't have a majority liberal government. And that's exactly what the NDP handed to them, with this quasi, not a coalition, which is, it's a coalition. I mean, just for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. It keeps them in power. So this left a perfectly good opportunity, in my belief, that the NDP, no, sorry, the PPC could have came in and said, hey, and started lobbying NDP voters and disaffected liberals. But that's not what we saw. When we saw Maxime Bernier run in Lisgar, Portage Lisgar, he went after the conservatives. That's exactly, that was his target. And, he took full advantage of the fact that Trudeau wanted to talk about abortion, which has never been an issue politically for us in a lot of years, at least not in the mainstream. But Trudeau wanted to talk about that because everybody was talking about China. So, the usual liberal tactics, gay marriage and abortion, right? From the 90s. Pulls that hat out, and then Maxime Bernier said, okay, the media will listen to me if I talk about that, right? That's kind of the gist I got from it. And I did do a video kind of calling out Maxime Bernier, but I've been friendly with Maxime, so I like, it's a push and a pull at the same time. But I feel disappointed that the PPC didn't go after the NDP voters. They did, in fact, go the direction that the Conservatives were all afraid of, and that was the vote split. And they went that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that analysis of you, and I think you're pretty bang on with that. That's why I'm kind of hoping in this next election they will focus on some orange areas and really attack to take over some NDP seats, because the numbers show the PPC is attracting Liberal voters and NDP voters more than they are CPC voters. And they're actually attracting far more parents now all of a sudden who are leaving the left because they're not cool with what's going on with their children.
One of the things PPC that it needs to be understood is that people on the left are very whatever you can call it, propaganda or just seeding of these ideas. They will not vote conservative. They see blue, they cringe at it. They won't. So like, you need to give them a viable alternative. I've been arguing this for a while.
Independent. That's independent.
Yeah.
So I can appeal to Liberals. I can appeal to NDP, especially here. So here's my pitch to non CPC voters in Yellowhead. There's no chance you're going to have any representation, full stop, unless you vote differently. If you go with an independent, at least I can also attract CPC as well, because I'm a strong conservative independent. So I'm able to be a little bit more firm than our current CPC, but I am capable, competent, and willing to listen to all sides, because I have no allegiance to a party. So if you're an NDP voter that has no representation in Yellowhead at all, well, you're not going to get it in the next election unless you pick somebody who will take your call, who will take your message and listen to you. And Clyde, this is what I'm demonstrating with my show and all my work. I'm not an MP yet. We're a couple of years away from the election, but yet I am here working like an MP, doing my best to, shed light on the Coutts, shed light on the POC, other problems. I'm here doing MP's work without the paycheck. And I think this is a great way to demonstrate to my neighbors that I am the competent person that they're looking for. And I'm already ahead of the game by doing this kind of work, which includes a podcast, interviewing people, and getting involved in my community directly. And this is without a paycheck. So if I had the election and I did have MP power, like I was actually empowered with the MP power, imagine what I could do then. This is what I'm doing now. Without that, give me a little bit more power and I can knock on doors and people have to open them for me. That would be an incredible thing to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And represent people in Ottawa, like actually go there and be able to put your voice out there. I know there's a whole game once you get there too. And there's the whole, backbenchers versus the people who will toe the party line. They'll do the thing. And that's a real concern. But that's a whole other discussion altogether. I think one thing that could drive a healthy democracy, even in this case, because right now people are a little turned off by the politics on the right hand side of things. The left, there's only 23% of them apparently now. We saw in recent thing that there's only 23% of people support Trudeau anymore. Most people are going elsewhere. Again, independent, NDP, PPC, and some people moving over to the CPC. Now, what's really disappointing for a lot of people who are the big hopefuls, we've got some people, they've got some balls finally. They're going to come in and they're going to say the thing and they're going to do the thing, and then they don't. And they're really being run by polls. They're being run by the media analysis. What the media is going to do, they'll kowtow to the media first and foremost. We saw this recently with the t-shirts, the guy with the green shirt, the straight pride shirt, which was a joke. And what's their response to it? They're, no, I'm not associated with that. They won't even defend that. So people are like, well, are you going to defend anything? Like, what is it going to come down to? And it really comes down to lowest common denominator. So in an election, if a conservative party is running, they're really going after the people who aren't voting for them yet. So all of the things that they're going to have to say are not going to be for conservatives. They're going to be for liberals that they're trying to bring over to the other side. And, oh, you guys, we got your vote anyway. Who cares? Get out of here. Get lost. And this is a real concern of mine. And this, I think, is a perfect place for independents and other people to come in and say, listen, I'll give you a voice. I'll be that guy for you.
Right.
And I'll work with the conservatives. I'll work with them. I'll work with the other side too. We'll get in there and actually do something. Or at least, even if I don't win, I'll be the guy to shift the focus of this whole thing so that it actually makes the conservatives scared that they'll lose the votes. Like, forget about vote splitting. You know what vote splits? Not concerning yourself with the people who normally vote for you. That causes a vote split, because that's when people start turning away and going, oh, Mr. PP, you're PPing away your chance to get the votes from all these people. And I'm not railing against. So like, I know people on the internet are absolutists. When I say this stuff, I'm saying this stuff to encourage people. I'm trying to encourage all politicians out there from all parties. Listen to the constituents. Listen to what they have to say. It's when you ignore them like that on genuine concern issues. Like there's a rally forming right now around September of 1 million people in Canada to come out against this whole idea of indoctrination of children. in schools.
Wonderful.
And this is all forming around, and not only that, is it's bringing so many people together. It's bringing people that have been split up in North America, in the Western world, since 2001. Muslims, Christians, Jews, secular people, all coming together under one umbrella, saving children, saving our future.
100%.
And these things are inspiring. To see politicians waiving that opportunity to be a part of this movement is just, for me, it's absurd.
You're not wrong, my friend. And you basically said all the reasons why I didn't stick with the PPC party. I wish them the best. I wish Max the best. Some good people in there, some high energy people that have the right ideas. Unfortunately, they still have party platform, and they do require you to stick to it. And I'm a strong believer that the party platform is where the voice goes to die, because we don't actually have a voice to the platform. The platform has to be adopted wholeheartedly. And that's a problem for me. So when I'm talking to my neighbors, and if the issue isn't on the platform, it's not an issue I can even bring forward because of the party platform. And that's just one thing. I don't want to give the impression that that's the entire reason why I didn't join the PPC party completely. There's a few, but I do believe the only way to have a true representation in the House of Commons is to send somebody who is a common.
Yeah, commoners. We're also, that's how it's supposed to work.
It's in the name. It's in the name.
But it's all brand and party affiliation. So people, and this is the thing. So many people don't pay attention, and then when it comes time to vote, they go, I always get Pepsi, and then these guys are like, I always get Coke. You know, so they look for Pepsi and Coke on the ballot. One way you can get rid of that is to say no party names on the ballots. You know,
that's a good way, because I would like people to know their candidate. Absolutely. If you find the best candidate happens to be in a party, well, then that's the best candidate. But it would be wonderful if there was debates and the community actually paid attention to the candidate and their qualifications and what they can do for you. Because I believe in that environment, we definitely would get far better results in the House of Commons.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much we should be reforming, but I mean, what are they working on right now? They're working on reducing. Well, this is a funny thing. Trudeau ran on election reform. The thing that he's putting through the Senate right now at the moment, the election changes are going to be making people as low as the age of 16 eligible to vote in Canada. This is just ludicrous. We're going
in the wrong direction.
We are going in the wrong direction on that one. And I've even been an advocate to say that anyone who is working for the government should forfeit their right to vote. I mean, that's and this is an idea I've toyed with, and people could criticize me for saying that. But if it's a conflict of interest, if you're on the take. And this would include a number of different positions, but it would be, if you're on the take, then it's conflict of interest for you to be able to vote for this for any party in an election or any individual. So you should take that as okay, well, I got my government job, but this is the price I have to pay for it.
Well, I have a suggestion for one reform that I think would be relatively simple, and we've already have a proven example of that, and that is to have a recall on the riding level. So in BC, I believe you know this, you guys have the ability to recall elected officials.
It's tough. It's not easy.
It's tough, but you at least have that ability.
Yes.
That should be on all elected positions. We should have straight up, there's a recall process. And on all elected positions. So if you decide as the constituents that your guy is no longer doing it for you, or gal, you can go ahead and go through a recall process. Yes, it's difficult, but at least you have it.
Yes, that's true.
If you don't have it, there's no option.
I know they're trying to recall David Eby, but it does not look like it's going to happen.
It could be difficult because the soundbite that I really gets my hair up and gets me frustrated, and I'm not easily angered, but what does anger me is when I hear politicians, and this is what Trudeau says all the time, and even Doug Ford in Ontario, you have your input at the election. So that message that they tell the people, you get to have your say on election day, basically telling you to bugger off all other days, and they got it. I don't believe that's democracy. I believe you should be
No.
held accountable every day that you work, and you should be worried about your job every day that you work, so that you may lose it if you're not doing it right. We would, any of us in our job, we don't have 4-year terms where we can stay there no matter what we do. I believe the ability to recall any elected official is something we should be seriously taking a look at.
Yeah, absolutely, and make all lobbying televised.
Well, you should watch my interview with Randy Hilliard. He was an MPP in Ontario
Yeah.
who ended up becoming an independent. Right? Watch that interview if you had a chance. It's 2 hours, but he explains the inner workings of the Conservative Party. Actually, all parties. He made it very clear that it's not the media. It's special interest. It's lobbyist groups. Those are the ones who make the decisions.
Yeah, I heard that recently, that we should be televising lobbying. If we televised it, then it would be open and out there in the public. Because I mean, we as commoners, we don't have the ability to go and lobby. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it would cost money, it'd take time out of your day. There's all this stuff. My opinion, my personal opinion, is the government should be so small, it should be inconsequential in your life, to the point where you don't care what the government officials are doing. There's not enough of them, and it doesn't matter. But it's when the government grows so largesse and is so involved in your life and so cumbersome, then now everyone's clamoring for a piece of that power because they just want to take back a bit of their life, and that's where we're at now, and we need to really shrink that.
Look, I absolutely can talk for hours with you on this, but I am going to have to run because I am a morning show guy. So 10 o'clock is late for
10
me.
o'clock's late. Okay,
if you don't mind,
fair enough.
I would like to plug a couple things.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind. Yeah, so my morning show that we do for the Coutts men. So every morning we get together with Donald Best, who's a police investigator for corruption. We sit with Granny Mackay, who is a liaison to the family. She knows them all. She's been dealing with the men all the way. And we sit with Danielle, who has all of the information. She's collected all the court documents, disclosure, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The four of us each day, we sit down and we go through all of this. So we've had gun experts on, we've had vets on who really know their stuff. We've had some legal people on. And what we're doing, and we've done 20 days of this now, so 4 weeks of this, is we're going through all the information, all of it. We had Gord McGill come on. He's a Newsweek writer, so he interviewed us for an entire episode and then wrote the article for Newsweek, which really kicked off all of the media now paying attention to this. It's Rebel who referenced the Newsweek article. True North is referencing the Newsweek article. Everybody's referencing the Newsweek article. So you'll actually be able to see how that Newsweek article interview went. And why I'm pitching this to your audience is because if you really want to know what's going on in Coutts in fine detail, I can squeeze a bunch in an hour and a half with you, but we've done over 22 hours of it now, and we're not stopping until the men are out.
Right.
So my morning show is at 6 a.m. Mountain Time. It'll be 5 a.m. for you guys, but they can go ahead and watch the replay. I also have a show I call the Yellowhead Yacht Club. This is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, where I interview somebody for 2 hours. So I've had Jeremy McKenzie on, Maxime Bernier. I've had many, many, many people that you'll know. And coming up is Chris Barber. Next week I have Dr.
He's great. I had him
Peter
on the
McCullough.
show. He's just such a guy.
Yeah, he's fun in the text. Yeah. Going back and forth, he's got quite the personality.
He's cool.
And I like him a lot. Tamara Lynch will be on as well. She's coming in August.
Nice.
So go ahead if you want to know freedom fighters, leaders, public figures. I'm interviewing a whole bunch of them. And then every Wednesday, Clyde, this is a fun one. I do what's called the Great Canadian Relay. So we start in Nova Scotia, and we have Morgan May, so the girlfriend of Jeremy, and she comes on as a reporter, correspondent for Nova Scotia, and then we do this all the way across with each province, all the way up to the territories. So we spend 3 hours talking to Canadians, providing the news from every region, so that Canadians can hear from Canadians about Canadians, and not have all these middlemen involved. It's a very fun show because we even have musical guests like Greg Arcade came on and played some live music for us. So this is a really fun way to spend a Wednesday afternoon if you want to get updated on what's going on across Canada.
Oh, nice.
And actually, if your schedule ever allows, I'd like to sneak you in for 20 minutes at some point to give us an update of the BC region.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, I'll try to make it work.
We'll figure it out because it's kind of, I think, when your show's on, so I'm not sure. but
yeah,
we'll
it's so
see what we
hairy
can do.
because I also have a full-time job at the same time, so
Mhm.
I do a lot of hours on this YouTube thing. It's incredible. My entire morning, like hours before I go to work, is all wrapped up, and then I have two beautiful children and an amazingly beautiful wife that I do need to give attention to as well. So these are all my things, my pre.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah,
I
preset things.
homeschool. We take care of our kids here as well. Time is definitely it's very limited around here. And I got one more last plug for you because I'm kind of proud of this one.
Okay.
I wrote my first book.
Oh,
So the
nice.
book's called Bearing Witness. And what this book is about, it is a #1 Amazon seller. Actually, my digital was #1 and the paperback was #2 at one point. So quite proud of
Well,
that.
you've got the audio equipment.
But
You got to do an audible.
maybe we'll get to. I got to get the time. But what this book is about I think what we're missing here in society and what may help a lot is witnessing. We don't do enough witnessing. So this book will teach you how to be a good witness, how to be a legal witness, how to stay out of trouble, how to use your equipment to record things, how to report things, how to follow up on things. Because the idea is if we have more people out there that are credible witnesses, we can definitely report more things, have more court cases, and maybe hold some people accountable for what's going on. So this book will teach you how to use your phone, capture events, how to reach out to the media, talk to them, how to reach out to authorities, report things. This book is meant to teach people how to become good witnesses in our society. Because I strongly believe without witnesses, we really will not have accountability.
Yes.
So my desire here is to educate people in an easy to consume way, how to be better witnesses out there.
Wow.
And not become part of the problem or anything like that, because I think this is what we need.
That's fantastic, actually. Yeah, so no problem plugging that book. What again was the title?
It's called Bearing Witness. It's available on Amazon. And if you email me at here
yeah, there we go. So you can see the whole thing. Yeah. Bearing Witness.
Yeah, if you email me at bearing-witness@outlook.com, I'll provide this to you later as well.
Yeah.
You can buy it directly from me, or you just go on Amazon worldwide and you can pick it up there.
Yeah, brilliant. So send me all the links. I'll make sure that they go into the description down below. I think I'll
For sure.
I'll parse this up so it's not just in the whole live stream, but I'll publish it as a separate video so everybody can watch this as well.
Oh, thank you.
And
I
do a podcast as well. I try to when you're this busy, you try to grab everything where you can and put it out there. But yeah.
Well, let me offer something to you then. Let me put an offer out there for you. So I'm going to be in Lethbridge for the entire court for this Coutts guys. I'm setting up a studio at the hotel next to it. I'm happy to come on and do updates daily or every couple of days if you'd like to know what's going on with this.
Yeah, maybe weekly or bi-weekly, monthly. We'll see because man, I have a whole roster next week. I was able to squeeze you in tonight. Sure. That's why I'm so stoked about this. So we'll get you in for.
I'm doing that with Viva, True North, and Fox News. Mm-hmm. So if you want that as well, and what Absolutely. You might be able to grab is, I might just give you the clip and then you can play it or something, so it doesn't have to be live. But
yeah,
it might be a way for you to, update your audience on what's really going on for the next week, because it's going to be an important week.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that I was able to connect with you and bring you on.
Yeah,
for
I've been a fan for a while.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I got to tell you, one of my proudest moments was when one of my viewers clipped you saying my name during the POEC. So they put it into the chat and says, Jason Lavigne is covering the POEC, and you read it out, and they clipped it and sent it to me. I'm like, look at that.
Oh, man, wow.
Now on Clyde, do something.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I'm just a guy who puts my face on the camera, and
I know. I get this too. I'm just in my fifth wheel. I have Starlink and solar. This is how I'm running this thing here.
Oh, it's awesome. I really appreciate everyone who does this. Like anyone who gets on board and just put the information out there as much as you can. I mean, if a dyslexic mechanic like myself can do it, anybody could do it. We can all do this and get the info out there. And I'm really proud to see that you're doing this and running as an independent as well, so you can represent Canadians in a real way. And well, thanks again for joining me on the show. And well, of course, we'll have you again soon.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Clyde. And if we can ever work out the schedule, I'd love to give you one of my interviews. It's fun.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, we'll do that for sure. All right. Well, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Clyde, and thanks everybody that's watching. You guys have a great night.
Cheers.
And Coutts Four. we're going to root for them on Tuesday.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Don't forget to send me the information where I can get people to mail them so people can send them letters.
Yeah, I'll send you all that stuff we spoke about. Maybe you'll get it in the morning if you don't mind, but
I don't mind.
It's getting late on this side.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Clyde.
All right. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.